In this video, we're going to review what are the fastest, least expensive, and most popular visa types for Canada and why. We will also review the pros and cons and the requirement per visa application type. Let's get started. Depending on your goals and conditions, there are different options for you. Number 1, study permit. Canadian study permit has a lot of benefits, but it is one of the most expensive visa types. There are some solutions to cover the expenses of the study permit, and I will explain about those later. A study permit can be issued for both full-time or part-time educations. Two main requirements for the study permit are letter of acceptance and proof of fund. Then you get the letter of acceptance from a Canadian university or college. You can apply for the study permit. Depending on the country you are applying from, it can take up to 3 months to get the study permit. When applying for a study permit, the most challenging requirement is to provide the proof of fund. Proof of fund shows that you're capable to pay your tuition and living expenses in Canada. There are some solutions that can help you provide the proof of fund, and I'm going to talk about this shortly. Now, let's see what are the pros and cons of having a Canadian study permit. If your study permit gets approved, your family can also come to Canada and live with you. Your spouse will receive an open work permit, which allows them to work and have an income in Canada while you are studying. And your dependent children can study or work. Also, you can legally work in Canada while you are on a study permit. After the graduation, you can apply for the post-graduation work permit, which allows you to work full-time in Canada. Therefore, Canadian study permit will provide you and your family a bright path to become a permanent resident. If you would like to learn more about international students working in Canada, rules and regulations, make sure that you watch this video. We talked about the advantages of a Canadian study permit. However, there are some disadvantages too. A study permit is very expensive. As of January 1st, 2024, Canadian study permit applicants should show that they have enough funds to cover the first year's tuition fee plus $21,000. And if your family is accompanying you to come to Canada, you have to add a $4,000 for the first person and additional $3,000 per additional person. There is no surprise that many applicants might not have that much money, but there are solutions for that too. You can apply for a scholarship through your university program, or you can get a student loan from websites like Passage.com. Visit Passage.com website for more information about the student loans. Number 2, work permit. Work permit is one of the least expensive visa application types. There are 2 types of work permits: open work permit and closed work permit. Closed work permit means that you can only work for the designated employer who applied for your work permit. Open work permit means that you don't have any limitations and you can work for any employer. If you're outside of Canada and you would like to come to Canada with a work permit, first you need to secure a job offer from a Canadian employer. Then your Canadian employer needs to apply for an LMIA, and once you have a positive LMIA, then you can apply for a work permit. When you arrive in Canada, you're only allowed to work with your designated employer who applied for your LMIA. However, if you would like to change your job or your employer, you can do that by applying for a new closed work permit. There are some minor cases where you don't need to have a job offer from a Canadian employer or a positive LMIA in order to apply for a work permit. Now let's see what are the pros and cons of having a Canadian work permit. If your closed work permit gets approved, you can work with a designated Canadian employer and you can have a decent income. Your family can also come with you and live in Canada. If you have a closed work permit, your spouse, on the other hand, will get an open work permit, which means they can work for any Canadian employer and they wouldn't have the limitations that you have. And similar to the study permit, your dependent children can work and study in Canada. You and your family will benefit from a free healthcare in Canada. Through the work permit, you get the Canadian work experience, which allows you to apply for a permanent residency. The disadvantage of a Canadian work permit is that you will be on a closed work permit, which means you can only work with the designated employer. To apply for the work permit, you still need a proof of fund of $13,000 for the main applicant. If you are a family of 2, that number changes to the total of $17,000 for both. Number 3, visitor visa. Visitor visa allows you to enter and remain in Canada temporarily, either to visit your family members or just as a tourist. The most important criteria for your visitor visa to be approved is to convince the immigration officer that you will go back to your original country after your temporary visit in Canada. There is no specification on the minimum amount required for the proof of fund when you are applying for a visitor visa, but you have to prove that you have enough funds to cover your costs while you're visiting Canada. The best things about the Canadian visitor visa are there is no visa interview. You can get a multiple entry visa that allows you to visit Canada as many times as you want. Majority of the visitors can stay in Canada up to 6 months after each entry. Now let's get back to the best part. If you have a valid multiple entry visitor visa of Canada, you do not need to apply for a visa to enter to the following countries. Good luck with your visa application and see you in the next video. Cheers!